Hello and welcome to Auto Today. I'm Dipayan and you're joining me in Bangalore to check out a brand new SUV that's looking to take on the stranglehold that the Creta has had on the B segment for all these years. Now, this is the new Toyota Hyryder, and what sets it apart is the technology that it offers. But before we jump into our review and get into the technology and what sets it apart, let's take a look at the design and the first impression that it makes and see what the Hyryder is really all about in the flesh. And of course, first impressions begin at the front, and I think the Toyota Hyryder makes quite the impression from the moment that it enters the frame. But let's take a closer look at the details that sets it apart and why this SUV stands out. Now, of course, you get all LED lighting because it is a very premium SUV. You get LED fog lamps with these nice chrome garnishes on either side. You get split LED headlamps that are separated by this chrome bar that runs along the front. Of course, you do get a blocked out grille that's as a tip of the hat to its EV genealogy. And you also get these air vents since there is an ICE motor sitting under the hood that needs air and cooling. Another really cool feature I like about the front is this hexagonal grille that really adds to the butch character of the SUV from the moment you set eyes on it. Now, the rest of the metal work is quite subtle but still stands out nicely. There are these nice shut lines across the bonnet that add some character to it, and of course the bumper has a whole lot of nice indents that really help it to stand out. Now, of course, once we move to the side, the most significant design cue on the Hyryder is this very prominent shoulder line that runs in the metal body along the entire length of the car, and I think it adds that heft and presence that make it an authentic looking SUV. Now, adding to that look, you also get this plastic cladding that runs all along the bottom channel and again adds to that butch appeal that you would want from an SUV. Aside from that, of course, it's all very minimal and clean, and I really like that. But of course, to add that to that contrast, you have 17-inch wheels with dual tone alloys that look absolutely incredible, and they add to the sporty appeal of the Hyryder. Now, of course, compared to the very minimal profile of the Hyryder, the rear is quite busy, but that's not to say it doesn't look good. I think it adds a lot of character to the SUV. You get, of course, again, LED lighting all the way through. You get this little lighting structure inset in the bumper that looks really good, and of course it's set in this really nice indent that adds to the width and presence of the SUV as well. And you get, of course, this chrome strip that sets it apart as a Toyota SUV. There are plenty of lines in the metal which add character, of course. And of course, being an SUV, you also get a force skid plate that runs along the bottom of the bumper. Hop inside the cabin, and the first thing you are going to notice is that the Hyryder isn't as plush as some of the other SUVs in the segment. The door panels use quite a bit of hard plastics, as does the top of the dash and most of the center console. That's not to say that it feels flimsy, but with respect to the competition that Toyota has in its sights, it does seem to lose some ground. Of course, all the on-paper features are very much there. At the center, a large touchscreen infotainment comes with Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. Both connect wirelessly. There's also an HUD that displays most of the critical MID data that drastically reduces eyes-off time and adds to the cabin's tech repertoire. The front seats are ventilated with 3 levels of cooling, although it's worth noting that, like the Škoda's, Toyota's seat ventilation system is also pretty noisy. The seats are trimmed in dual-tone brown and black leatherette. The steering is adjustable for reach and rake, although I found the button layout on the wheel quite unintuitive and it takes a little bit of a learning curve to get used to. There is also a panoramic 2-fold sunroof that is a strong hybrid only feature for the Hyryder, but does really add to the premium appeal of the cabin. Now, as soon as you hop in the second row, the first thing you're going to notice is that there's plenty of knee room, and that means despite being 6 foot tall, I can still fold my legs quite comfortably in the back seat, and that is saying something. Of course, headroom is a little compromised, and if you're more than 6 feet tall, it is going to be a little bit of an issue. You do get an adjustable headrest on all 3 seats, but while the Hyryder is not very wide, it will be comfortable for 2 people, but 3 people is going to be a little bit of a squeeze. You also get this rear armrest with 2 cup holders, which is a really convenient thing to have. AC vents, of course, are at the back as well, and you get 2 fast USB chargers. I think that the Hyryder is quite a nice place to be, but I don't know whether it measures up to the competition in terms of comfort and in terms of quality of build, especially in the second row. So now that we're behind the wheel of the new Toyota Hyryder, it's time to talk a little about the technology that sets it apart, the engine and the powertrain. Now, first of all, this is a full proper hybrid, which means that there is an electric motor and an internal combustion motor running in tandem to give you the best possible fuel efficiency and, of course, the best possible power and torque when you need it. Now, the internal combustion motor is a TNGA motor, which means it has been developed by Toyota specifically for this hybrid powertrain. It's a 3-pot 1500cc motor that makes about 93 bhp and 122 Nm of torque. The electric motor on its own makes about 80 bhp and 90 Nm of torque. Now, when you put them together, you get a combined output of 115 bhp, which is more than enough to make for a very, very sprightly drive. Now, that said, the motor is, of course, mated to Toyota's eCVT, which is a hybrid specific drivetrain, and it is a CVT gearbox, but it does not have a manual mode, which means all of the gears are being continuously varied, and you're getting the best possible transmission throughout on a single drive. Now, speaking of the gearbox, you get a standard PNRD system with the additional B selector, which allows for engine braking, because being a hybrid, most of the time the engine is going to be switched off, which means you're not going to get engine braking. So when you're driving downhill, you can slot it in B mode and get the full effect of the engine braking as you're driving. Now, in addition to all of this, you also get 3 drive modes: Eco, a normal and a power drive mode, which significantly change the way the throttle responds to your left foot and also the way the car drives. You also get a full EV mode, which Toyota say you can use for up to 6 kilometers depending on your usage. Like right now, the car is in full EV mode. It's driving along without the motor being on, and quite silently at that. Now, in terms of ride and handling, I really like the way the steering feels. It feels very direct, and it weighs up as you go up in the rev band and build speed, and it feels really good out on the road, and it's quite direct and quite sharp. The thing I don't like, of course, is the fact that the suspension is set up really stiff with very little damping for sharp jerks. So which means if you go over speed breaker without braking adequately, you're going to feel it in the cabin. Now, this is something that will be a stark contrast against the competition that have the ride and handling down, but I don't think that it is a deal breaker, so to speak. Otherwise, I think the cabin is quite silent, and it is a nice place to be. Of course, you get a touchscreen infotainment system with wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. You also get a wireless charger and all the other little things that make this a premium SUV. So in terms of cabin feel and quality, I think the Hyryder is up to the mark. It's a great car to drive. In the end, there is no denying that the Hyryder has a unique value offering for the B segment that should really help it stand out. There is a lot to love, and while it's apparent that some corners have been cut to meet price expectations, a lot will depend on how well Toyota are able to position it. If they do get the price right, and with everything on offer, and the exceptionally low running costs, it does have the potential to take a significant chunk out of one of India's most hotly contested segments. As always, if you like this video, don't forget to smash that like button and of course subscribe to the Auto Today channel if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching.